For most of us, social anxiety is all too familiar. Chances are, most of us have experienced it to some degree, whether it's getting nervous when it's time to give a presentation in front of a group, or sticking close to our partner at a party to avoid mingling with strangers. That's social anxiety. Of course, it's not always this obvious. We might be annoyed by our roommate's loud music but avoid telling them due to fear of being judged, instead pretending it doesn't bother us, or trying hard to deal with it. For many people, social anxiety is limited to specific types of social situations. They might find formal settings to be nerve-wracking, but feel comfortable in intimate gatherings. Some might only feel anxious when using public restrooms, eating in front of others, or giving a speech. And there are those who get anxious in nearly every social scenario. Social anxiety refers to nervousness or discomfort in social situations, usually because of fear about doing something embarrassing or foolish, making a bad impression, or being judged critically by others. For a deeper understanding of social anxiety, we need to delve into its components. Cheek and Watson concluded that individuals' experience of shyness and social anxiety often fall into one of three categories. The physical aspect encompasses the unpleasant physical emotions and sensations. The cognitive aspect involves anxiety-inducing thoughts, expectations, and personal predictions. The behavioral aspect relates to actions such as avoiding social situations. Cognitive behavioral therapies, which are among the most effective treatments for social anxiety, target these three aspects. The foundation of the therapy is to examine what we feel, think, and how we behave during episodes of social anxiety. Social anxiety and physical feelings. Physical symptoms of social anxiety can include a racing or pounding heart, breathlessness or feelings of being smothered, sweating, blushing, and a trembling voice. These symptoms are often feared by individuals with social anxiety, as they worry that others will notice and judge them based on these physical manifestations of anxiety. There are a few points here. People who aren't socially anxious in a situation might experience these symptoms as well. Not every sweating or racing heart is a sign of social anxiety. Besides, research suggests that these symptoms may be less noticeable to others than individuals with social anxiety perceive them to be. For example, a study by Mulkins and colleagues found that socially anxious individuals were more likely to believe that they were blushing compared to non-anxious individuals. But in fact, there were no actual differences in the intensity of blushing between the two groups. While others often notice these symptoms less frequently than one might believe, it's still true that the symptoms can be noticeable to others at times. However, as long as an individual isn't afraid of others' perceptions of these symptoms, the symptom itself won't necessarily be problematic. If you step onto a stage with visibly shaking hands, as long as you're not worried about the audience's judgment, the fact that you're sweating probably won't make you very uncomfortable, and you'll be less anxious performing. The authors of Shyness and Social Anxiety workbook write, "Not everyone who blushes, sweats, and shakes excessively also experiences intense fear when around other people. Experiencing these symptoms is not necessarily the problem. In fact, your beliefs about the meaning and possible consequences of these symptoms are at least as important a contributor to your social anxiety as the actual symptoms." Social anxiety and thinking. Imagine you've prepared a lavish dinner for a friend who promised to visit after a long time. They told you they'd be at your place by 7 p.m. It's now 9 p.m. and there's no sign of them, nor have you received any message or call. How would you interpret this situation? What would be going through your mind? If you assume that they might have gotten caught up in some unavoidable situation, you'd likely feel worried or sympathetic. However, if you thought their tardiness was due to negligence or forgetting the dinner altogether, you might feel upset or undervalued. If you believed they were intentionally avoiding the dinner without notifying you, feelings of anger or disappointment might arise. The same scenario can trigger different emotional reactions in different people based on their beliefs about the situation. Strictly speaking, people don't react emotionally to the situations and events in their lives. Rather, they react to their beliefs and interpretations concerning these situations and events. People who experience social anxiety tend to perceive social situations as threatening or expect negative results. They commonly hold beliefs such as, "I need everyone to like me. If someone doesn't like me, it's because I'm not likable. I'll embarrass myself if I do this or do that. Feeling anxious means I'm weak. I must be able to hide it when I have anxiety symptoms." Social anxiety and behavior. From a behavioral perspective, people often either avoid social situations entirely or quickly resort to tactics that alleviate their anxiety. While these strategies might offer immediate relief, they rob the individual of the opportunity to discover that their negative predictions weren't going to come true. You may have heard the term safety behaviors. They are actions taken to restore psychological safety in situations where one feels insecure. People with social anxiety often incorporate them to feel less anxious. They might show up late to work meetings and leave early to avoid small talk with colleagues. In public, they divert their gaze to their smartphones to avoid eye contact. Engaging in conversation might be characterized by speaking very quietly or asking too many questions, a potential attempt to reduce attention drawn to oneself. They may come up with excuses to decline social gatherings. At parties, they may clutch their wine glass tightly to hide trembling hands, or volunteer to wash the dishes not just out of courtesy, but as a tactful escape from the probing eyes and questions of fellow guests. Any of these three components can initiate the cycle of anxiety. A physical sensation of sweating in a meeting can trigger the thought of being judged by others, resulting in even more intense sweating and increased anxiety, ultimately leading to the behavior of leaving the room. At a party, a friend of yours cracks a racist joke that you find offensive. You worry that if you respond, others will judge you or think you're a buzzkill. Torn between speaking up and staying quiet, your heart rate increases and your mouth goes dry. Ultimately, you choose to remain silent and even consider leaving the party early to avoid any further discomfort. Understanding the components of social anxiety will serve as a cornerstone to develop effective techniques and strategies to overcome our fear of social situations.
Subscribe to Clarified Mind for more videos on this and other mental health topics.